This is Tatyana Zalevskaya, and as political careers go, hers has been extraordinary. On December 4th, 2025, at just 32 years of age, Zalevskaya became the youngest ever chairperson of Transnistria's parliament, the Supreme Soviet. But that's not really the extraordinary part. What's really extraordinary is that she was elected to the Supreme Soviet for the first time on November 30th, 2025, just 4 days previously. In other words, instead of serving her time on the back benches, like most newly elected members of parliament do, Zalevskaya was selected by her fellow MPs to lead the parliament. 20 of the 33 members had just been re-elected and were therefore more senior than Zalevskaya, but they all stepped aside, including the previous chairman, Alexander Korshinov, who made way for her and took the position of deputy chairman. That's an extraordinary turn of events, but this wasn't the first time in Zalevskaya's career that more senior people have made way for her to take power. Zalevskaya ran for public office for the first time ever in the November 2020 elections when she was just 27, running for a seat on the local council for Slobodaya district in the far south of Transnistria. She won her seat, and just like what happened 5 years later, a few days after her election, the other councillors of Slobodaya district, including many who had served on the council for years, selected the newcomer, Zalevskaya, to be the district council chairperson. This isn't a normal trajectory for a political career, even for a very talented or charismatic politician. It's pretty obvious that someone, or something, is helping Zalevskaya's rapid rise through the ranks of Transnistria's politics. Not just helping her get elected, but ensuring she takes control of whatever body she is elected to. And to be honest, if I was Transnistrian President Vadim Krasnoselsky right now, I might be feeling pretty nervous. Could Tatyana Zalevskaya be Transnistria's next president? Who or what is behind her speed run through Transnistria's power structure? And what might this mean for the future of Transnistria and Moldova? Stay tuned. I will explain. Hi everyone, I'm Fredo Rockwell, and in this video we're going to examine the rapid rise to power of the new chairman of the Supreme Soviet, Tatyana Dmitrievna Zalevskaya. Before I begin though, I want to make 2 points. This video is not a personal attack on Chairperson Zalevskaya. Yes, she is an important official in a corrupt, authoritarian, unauthorized breakaway country, and she works very hard to promote its interests. And I think she is wrong to do so. But in most respects, she seems like a perfectly competent administrator, and in public at least, like a nice, conscientious, well-spoken person. Secondly, I invited Zalevskaya to take part in this video. I actually asked if she'd do an interview, answer questions, and help the world better understand her and her country. I never heard back from her, but Tatyana, if you're watching, the invitation is still open, so just get in touch. Okay, first, let's take a look at the life of Tatyana Zalevskaya before she burst onto the political stage. She was born in 1993 in a village called Korotnaya in Slobodaya district, the district she would later become the leader of. She grew up on a cattle farm and says her father was very strict and insisted she study very hard at school. He got his way. Tatyana graduated from high school with a gold medal in 2011, and she then left home for Moscow to enroll at the People's Friendship University, known as the RUDN, to study public administration. During the summer of 2013, she took part in the Work and Travel USA program that lets students come to the US to work and travel for up to 5 months. I'd love to know where she went and what she did, but so far I've not seen any information about this. After finishing her undergraduate degree at RUDN, she immediately re-enrolled for her master's, and at the end of this degree, she took a 3-month course to train as a television presenter. The highlight of the course was getting to be a red carpet interviewer at the Russian version of the MTV Awards, known as the RUTV Awards. She then enrolled for a 3rd degree at RUDN, a PhD, which she successfully completed in May 2020. while on this course, in August 2018, she got married. His name is Mr. Zalevsky, obviously, but his first name is not being mentioned in public statements, and he doesn't seem to be a public figure, so I'm not going to reveal it here. What has been made public is that he is also from Slobodaya district in Transnistria, and according to Zalevskaya, he's the one who said the couple should return from Moscow to Transnistria, and so that's what they did. During the summer of 2020, she secured a teaching position in the Public Affairs Department at Transnistria State University in Tiraspol, and then, as we know, she was elected to lead Slobodaya district a few months later in November. Now, population-wise, Transnistria is a small country of just 350,000 people. And in small population countries, it's really normal for extremely talented people to rise rapidly in whatever field of endeavor they are doing because there's just less competition. And Zalevskaya is obviously talented, smart, and charismatic. She also has a PhD in public administration from a prestigious Moscow university. She's Dr. Zalevskaya. So it's not surprising that the Transnistrian establishment would welcome her return and set her up with a plum job. But for Zalevskaya, things went much further than this, and people in power and authority actually stepped aside so that she could assume positions of power and authority over them. That is surprising. And I haven't even told you about what I think is the most surprising and arguably implausible part of Zalevskaya's career. I mentioned that on her return from Moscow, she got a position at Transnistria State University. She still has that teaching position today, and she was promoted to be head of the Public Affairs Department in 2023. Normally, being the head of a university department is a full-time job, as is being the speaker of a national parliament. But Zalevskaya does both. And, of course, she has a family. How can she possibly manage this? Well, in an interview, she said she works very hard, she's extremely well organized, and she sees her family at the weekends. So we've been beating around the bush for a while now. Let's get to the main question. How did all this happen? Who is pulling the strings to ensure that Zalevskaya rises to the top and takes control of every institution that she comes into contact with? And how long will this process continue? The most obvious answer, and the one that Moldovan critics of Zalevskaya level against her, is that she is a pawn of the sprawling Transnistrian corporation known as Sheriff. Sheriff was founded in June 1993, just a few days after Zalevskaya was born, actually. Initially, it traded in alcohol and cigarettes, but as it grew profitable, it expanded into other industries and today owns petrol stations, grocery stores, a mobile phone network, a car dealership, a television station, a publishing house, a construction company, 2 bread factories, a world-class stadium, and a highly successful football team that has made 7 appearances in the UEFA Champions League. And there's a decent chance I've not listed everything that Sheriff does in that description. There's an awful lot. Sheriff is present in nearly every aspect of every Transnistrian's life, and this one company reportedly accounts for a staggering 40% of the country's economy. I don't think that, as is sometimes alleged, Sheriff controls everything in Transnistria. Real life is never that simple and straightforward. But a company that is that economically important to a country is going to be extremely powerful. And Sheriff does appear to control Transnistria's main political institutions, at least indirectly. Every single member of the Transnistrian Supreme Soviet, including Chairperson Zalevskaya, is a member of the political party known as Obnovlenia, which means renewal. Obnovlenia first gained seats in the Supreme Soviet in the 2000 elections, before winning a majority in 2005. Since then, it has gradually increased its number of seats until the most recent election in 2025, when it won all 33 seats in a clean sweep. It's widely believed that Obnovlenia is controlled by Sheriff, and I don't doubt that it is, but there's no public acknowledgement of this connection. Having a single political party, which totally dominates Transnistria's politics, explains how Zalevskaya has managed to rise to the top so quickly and without opposition, but it doesn't explain why. Okay, there's this thing called the dictator's dilemma, which comes up in the life of every successful autocrat. Over the decades, you've amassed a lot of power and a lot of money, and now you're a bit older, and you just want to retire and enjoy your life, who do you appoint as your successor? You must decide carefully, or else you could wind up like President Ahidjo of Cameroon, who appointed Paul Biya his successor, only for Biya to turn on him, force him into exile, convict him of treason, and sentence him to death. Vladimir Putin is widely believed to have been appointed the successor of Boris Yeltsin only after he convinced Yeltsin that he would not turn on him or his family. Putin kept his word, but now, 27 years later, he appears to be stuck in office, with no one he can trust to take over. I made a video about the problems this is causing if you're interested. Transnistria doesn't have a single dictator who needs protecting from whoever takes over next, but it does have a generation of very powerful and now very wealthy oligarchs who are all getting a bit older, and they need to groom a successor who can come in and take over. And that person, in my opinion, is Tatyana Zalevskaya. And she's perfect for the role. Young, charismatic, smart, well-spoken, and obviously competent. And while her youth is part of her appeal as a politician, I think it also serves another role. Zalevskaya is the first significant office holder in Transnistria who was born after it declared de facto independence in 1991. To her, Transnistria's status as an unrecognized state is not necessarily a problem to be solved. It's just the way things have always been. And keeping the status quo in Transnistria is something that I think Sheriff and its owners undoubtedly want. As an unrecognized state, Transnistria's economic and legal systems exist in the shadows, and it's being in these shadows that has helped Sheriff grow to its position of dominance. If Transnistria was to be reintegrated into Moldova, or maybe somehow have its status as an independent country normalized, all this might end. The rule of law could be implemented, crimes could be investigated, and people might be held to account for their actions. That would be a disaster. So it's my guess that the ruling class in Transnistria wants someone skilled enough to maintain the murky status quo for as long as possible. Okay, so now I'm going to do the one thing that you're never supposed to do in political analysis, and that's make predictions. Transnistria will hold its next presidential election this December, and the constitution prevents the current president, Vadim Krasnostelsky, from running for a third term. But the constitution, as it's currently written, also prevents Zalevskaya from running. To run for president, you need to be 35, and she'll only be 33. However, with Obnovlenie controlling every single seat in the Supreme Soviet, amending the constitution should be very straightforward. So, will the political system be mysteriously reordered once again to make way for Tatyana Zalevskaya? I kind of doubt it. I do think Zalevskaya is meant to someday become president of Transnistria. Otherwise, none of what's happened so far makes sense. But I suspect whoever is ultimately calling the shots, whether it's Sheriff or some other institution, they don't want to rush things too much. After all, Zalevskaya served 5 years at the district council level before being elected to the Supreme Soviet. I suspect they'll also want her to serve a full term in the Supreme Soviet before she assumes the top job. So if the constitution isn't changed to allow Krasnostelsky to serve a third term, someone else may be brought in to keep the seat warm for Zalevskaya for a term, maybe two. In the meantime, it's possible that after this election or the next, she might get promoted to prime minister, especially if the current PM, Alexander Rosenberg, is the person elected president. And if I'm right, this means that the career trajectory of Tatyana Zalevskaya is more or less sort of set in stone and all decided at the young age of 32. The jobs she will have, Supreme Soviet Chairperson, Prime Minister, and President, are very prestigious and ego-boosting, but they probably won't be a huge amount of fun either. As I explained in my last video about Transnistria, the country is in a severe economic crisis that is set to continue for years, maybe indefinitely. Living standards will keep declining, and the population will keep shrinking as the best and brightest leave for Moldova and the EU. And if it's true that the political classes in Transnistria just take orders from Sheriff or other corporate interests, then even as president, all she would really be is the glorified mouthpiece of shadowy oligarchs. Instead of actually running a country, as her multiple degrees have prepared her to do, she'd be more like a television presenter who speaks the words she's told to speak and dazzles her audience with charm and personality. Is that what Tatyana Zalevskaya wants to be? A television presenter? Well, yeah, it's one of the things she trained to be when she was at university. Thanks for watching, and if you've watched this far, please go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and sign up for my new free monthly newsletter, which is just starting up. There's a link in the video description if you want to check that out. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.